How could Sisyphus enjoy an endless struggle? He was cursed to push a heavy boulder up a hill, and every time he reached the top, the boulder rolled back down. His task had no end. Over and over again, he would start, knowing that no matter how hard he worked, he would never succeed. This was his punishment, to repeat the same hopeless task for eternity. It seems impossible that anyone could find happiness in such a life, but the myth of Sisyphus holds a surprising truth. Despite the endless nature of his struggle, despite the futility of his task, Sisyphus was happy. How could this be? To understand, we must look at who Sisyphus was before his punishment and how he came to embrace his fate. Sisyphus was once a powerful king, ruling over Corinth. He wasn't just any ruler. He was clever, rebellious, and deeply ambitious. Known for his cunning mind, Sisyphus thrived on outwitting others. He often used his intelligence not for peace or prosperity, but for mischief, trickery, and personal gain. There are many stories about the exploits of Sisyphus, but none are more famous than his defiance of death itself. When Thanatos, the god of death, came to claim him, Sisyphus was ready. In an act of sheer audacity, Sisyphus managed to deceive Thanatos and imprison him. With death in chains, no living creature could die. Warriors wounded in battle remained alive, animals sick with age continued to breathe, and life went on without its natural end. The gods were outraged. The balance of the world had been thrown into chaos, and soon enough, Thanatos was freed. Sisyphus's defiance could not go unpunished, but Sisyphus, always one step ahead, had another trick up his sleeve. He instructed his wife not to bury his body properly after he died. When he arrived in the underworld, he used this oversight as a pretext to convince Hades to let him return to the living world to set things right. The gods, believing they were still in control, agreed. Once back in the world of the living, Sisyphus simply refused to return to the underworld. He cheated death once more, prolonging his life through wit and defiance. He lived many more years, enjoying the fruits of his deception. But the gods do not forget. Eventually, they reclaimed Sisyphus, this time ensuring that no amount of trickery could save him. His punishment was to match his crimes. Sisyphus was given an eternal task, to push a boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down every time he neared the top. He would start again, and again, and again. The gods believed they had designed the perfect punishment, a punishment not of physical suffering, but of mental anguish, born from the sheer futility of the task. For most, Sisyphus's fate would seem unbearable. To toil forever with no end in sight, with no hope of success, is the essence of despair. The task before him was not just physically demanding, but emotionally devastating. He was caught in a loop, his effort forever rendered meaningless by the inevitability of failure. Each day, he would begin the same process, shouldering the weight of the boulder, muscles straining as he climbed the steep hill, inching closer to the summit with every step. And each day, when he was on the brink of success, the boulder would slip from his grasp and tumble back down the slope. His efforts undone, Sisyphus would descend the hill once more to start again. There was no end to the cycle, no moment of respite, no reward for his labor. And yet, something extraordinary happened. Sisyphus did not despair. His punishment, designed to break him, did not crush his spirit. He did not resist the task, nor did he seek a way out. Instead, Sisyphus accepted his fate, and in that acceptance, something changed. The gods had condemned him to an eternity of labor, but what they couldn't control was how he viewed his labor. This is where Sisyphus's true defiance begins. Centuries later, the philosopher Albert Camus would see in Sisyphus's story a reflection of the human condition. For Camus, life itself often feels like Sisyphus's struggle, a series of tasks, efforts, and desires, all ultimately futile in the face of death. We live, we work, we strive, but in the end, none of us escapes the finality of death. No matter what we build, no matter how much we achieve, time will eventually erase all that we are. This is the core of the absurd. According to Camus, The absurd is the conflict between our desire to find meaning in life and the universe's indifferent silence. We seek purpose, but life offers no clear answers. We strive for permanence in a world that constantly changes, decays, and ends. In Sisyphus, Camus saw the ultimate absurd hero, a man condemned to an endless, meaningless task, who nevertheless finds a way to live with joy. Sisyphus's struggle is the perfect metaphor for human existence. He knows his task is futile, but he continues to push the boulder, not because he expects a different outcome, but because he chooses to embrace his fate. Camus asks us to imagine Sisyphus in the moments after the boulder rolls back down the hill as he walks down to begin his task again. In those moments, Sisyphus is conscious of his fate. He knows exactly what lies ahead. There is no hope for escape, no dream of the boulder staying at the top. And yet, in this knowledge, Sisyphus finds a kind of freedom. He is no longer trapped by the illusion that his task has a higher purpose. He does not wait for the gods to offer him release. He understands the absurdity of his situation and accepts it fully. And in that acceptance, Sisyphus becomes free. Sisyphus's happiness lies in his acceptance. The boulder will always roll back down. The task will always restart. But in choosing to push it anyway, Sisyphus asserts his will. The gods may have given him his punishment, but they cannot control his mind, his heart, or his spirit. Sisyphus teaches us that happiness doesn't come from the outcome of our efforts. It comes from the effort itself. By embracing the struggle, by finding meaning in the act of pushing, Sisyphus transforms his punishment into something more. The struggle, once meaningless, becomes his own. The boulder is not a symbol of despair, but of resilience. This is why Camus tells us that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. His happiness is not the fleeting kind that comes from success or achievement. It is a deeper, more profound happiness that comes from accepting the absurdity of life and continuing anyway. In his persistence, Sisyphus becomes stronger than the gods who sought to punish him. Sisyphus's story is not just about him. It is about all of us. Each person has their own boulders to push, their own hills to climb. Life presents us with challenges that can feel repetitive, tasks that seem pointless or overwhelming. Whether it's the day-to-day grind of work, the emotional weight of personal struggles, or the quest for meaning in an uncertain world, we are all, in some way, like Sisyphus. But Sisyphus's tale reminds us that the struggle itself can be a source of joy. The boulder, the hill, the endless repetition, these are not obstacles to happiness. They are the very things that shape our lives, that give us the opportunity to assert our will, to choose how we respond. Each time Sisyphus pushes the boulder, he is saying, "I will continue." He knows the boulder will fall again, but he does not let that knowledge stop him. He finds meaning in the act of pushing, in the strength required to keep going. His joy comes not from the hope of one day succeeding, but from the effort itself. Sisyphus represents the human condition. We all face the absurdity of life, the knowledge that our efforts may not have any ultimate meaning, the reality that we will face setbacks, failures, and loss. But like Sisyphus, we have the power to choose how we respond. The story of Sisyphus is a call to action. It invites us to embrace our struggles, to find joy not in some distant, elusive success, but in the daily act of living. Like Sisyphus, we are all pushing our boulders. And like Sisyphus, we can find freedom and happiness not by escaping the struggle, but by embracing it. Sisyphus was happy because he accepted his fate. He found joy not in reaching the top of the hill, but in the act of pushing. The struggle itself became his purpose. The boulder, once a symbol of punishment, became a tool of liberation. Sisyphus teaches us that life's meaning is not something we find. It is something we create. We may not be able to control the circumstances of our lives, but we can control how we respond to them. And in that response, in the decision to continue pushing, we find the deepest kind of happiness. Like Sisyphus, we can all find joy in the struggle. In the climb itself, we discover our strength, our resilience, and our freedom.